And John, I want to ask you too about this Sunday because it's a super interesting game because you have a Chargers team whose back's against the wall. They're 500, and of course, a couple weeks ago we'd be looking at this game a little different than we are now from how they've been playing. But your thoughts on the matchup? They're getting a lot of guys back healthy. David Montgomery, you're going to have a full offensive line healthy. Graham Glasgow just got the start, so big ups to him. But your thoughts on the matchup and the question I have for you is, who has a bigger game on Sunday? Who needs to? Is it Herbert or is it Jared Goff?
Yeah, absolutely. After the bye week, the Lions have big goals. They're on their path to secure the number one overall seed in the NFC. And I think coming out of the bye week relatively healthy, it bodes very well for the Lions. I just think that when you look at the opportunity to play the Chargers, you look at a coach in Brandon Staley who sometimes makes the key critical error late in the games. Real interesting that that's a coach that potentially is on the hottest seat in the NFL. Maybe a potential scouting opportunity for Lions OC Ben Johnson to look at what team could I potentially be coaching next year. Could it be Justin Herbert? I look at this matchup as an opportunity for the Lions to come out and really exert what they do well. I think that when Dan Campbell spoke to the media earlier, looking at the self-scout, looking at areas of improvement, I want to see how the Lions perform in the red zone. While the Chargers defense has been playing better, you got to look at who they have been playing. The Jets offense is complete ass. It's one of the worst offenses, I think, in the history of the NFL with Zach Wilson, and it's a head scratcher why Robert Saleh continues to put out an offense like that in front of a national stage. And it's such an to embarrass the organization. But I look at the Lions, and they have an opportunity to take advantage in the passing game. You're right. I think Jared Goff's going to have a great opportunity to play very well. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Montgomery, and Gibbs all have an opportunity to play at a high level on the road at SoFi Stadium. I think the Lions are going to show out and have a good performance.
John, we can hear you. That is, we can definitely confirm that. And you kind of mentioned some things about the Chargers. The Chargers consistently are as confusing of a team and organization as I've seen maybe in my lifetime. They have so much high-end talent. I would argue more high-end talent than even the Detroit Lions, but they're clearly the inferior team. So who are the Chargers players that Lions players should key in on? Who can the Lions not let beat them specifically?
Oh, this is great. The audience can hear me, but you can't. I can say whatever. This would be great. But I look at the Chargers. Yes, you have to respect your opponent. I think the first player that's been targeted by the Lions on the Chargers offense is number 13, Keenan Allen. I think that he's a veteran player that is the key target that Justin Herbert trusts. And then you look at, obviously, Austin Eckler. I think that when you turn on the tape, you see a player that can really take it and really expose defenses rather quickly, a savvy veteran. So I would keen in on Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler. And then for the Lions offensive line, which is great because they're all coming back healthy, like you guys had said, 5 returning starting offensive linemen that I think are going to play well. I think you have to really pay attention to the edges in Bosa and Khalil Mack. If you're able to really block well and keep Jared Goff clean, then you're going to have an opportunity to make to have your goals really take place out there on the road. But you just can't let Bosa wreck the game. If he gets in the grill of Jared Goff, that could wreck a lot of things for the Lions.
And I'm glad you said that, John, because I kind of talked about this yesterday. I think this game will be dictated in the trenches. I think the most important part of this game is the defensive line for the Lions getting after Herbert. Obviously not to the extent the Jets did because that defense is insane. But regardless, in the offensive line protecting Jared. And, of course, the flip-flop side of that, of Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack. I mean, those guys, Khalil's a little older, but still they're playing at a high level. Is that fair to say that I think that this game overall will be dictated? Because we know the Chargers' pass defense is bad. Jared Goff should be able to cook them up a little bit. He's returning home to SoFi Stadium. But is that fair to say this game will be dictated up front for both teams?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great that David Montgomery returns because I think that bodes well for Jared Goff, opening up the play action opportunities. I want to see David Montgomery continue to earn the tough yards. I hope that the lingering rib cartilage issue doesn't flare up. I mean, it's super tough when you see, obviously, when a player is returning, the Chargers defense should keen in on trying to take out David Montgomery. But you have an opportunity now to see the 1-2 punch of Montgomery and Gibbs. And I'm really excited to see what this new offensive line looks like with the Lions. And I think that when you see Graham Glasgow and what he's done, a veteran that deserves his kudos, an opportunity for him to play at 3 different spots to start the year, filling in for injury. And I think he is an upgrade over Big V. So I expect to see opportunities for David Montgomery to obviously earn 4 to 5 yards per carry. And that really opens things up for the Lions. If they can be ahead of the sticks, if they can clean up the mistakes that they've made in the red zone, if they can score touchdowns instead of settling for field goals, this game has an opportunity to get out of hand early for the Lions. And I think it's going to be an opportunity for them to get their 7th victory and really extend their lead in the NFC North. Because even though the Vikings have, issues at quarterback, they still are a team that's gritty and has found ways to win. So they're not just going to go away. So it would really be important for the Lions to get this W.
And another question we had, Donovan Peoples-Jones, a Detroit native out of Caz Tech. Do we expect to see him return, make his debut this week? Because I know you really don't expect to see a player play the first week after trade, especially offensively. But with the bye week, do you think there's any chance that we see him out there, or you still think they're going to hold him off for a little bit?
I think there's an opportunity to see him, but in a limited role. I just think that obviously it was interesting to see that he was listed as limited on the first team injury report that was released on Wednesday. We'll get a chance to see over the next couple days. But Dan Campbell said this is a big week for Donovan Peoples-Jones in regards to acclimating, learning about the system. And even if he's out there, I would see him probably less than maybe 15 snaps. I don't think he's going to get a bulk of targets or have a big responsibility his first week. But at the same time, when he does get out there, I'm excited to see what potential he does have to help this offense. Look, in the end, you want to see the collection of wide receivers really take the next step in the second half of the year. Among the biggest goals for the Lions is really taking strides to improve on offense. And if you can continue to move the chains and you have a reliable target in Donovan Peoples-Jones combined with St. Brown, combined with Sam Laporta, and then J-Mo taking whatever strides that he needs to take to get involved in this offense, it's going to be interesting to see. I'm curious as well to see how Jameson looks. Do they get him more involved, like Herman Moore said? Do they figure out the timing issues? Because everyone's looking at the film and saying, well, if you give him short passes, that's where he needs to be the most crisp. So whatever you can get out of Jameson is a bonus, but Donovan Peoples-Jones adds another layer of options for this offense. And the more options you have, the better off it's going to be. I think it was a savvy trade, but I don't think it's going to pay dividends early. I think they're looking for the dividends to pay off late in the season.
Hey, John. Speaking of, you mentioned Donovan Peoples-Jones. I'm going to ask this question. So, John, do you think it's more set up for the Lions' running game to have a big day, their passing game, or do you think this can just be a total offensive masterclass, or none?
Yeah, it's interesting. I definitely love the way in which the Lions offense has options. You can play any kind of style that you want when everybody's healthy. That's why this is key. Everybody's back. I think early on you want on the road to kind of weather the storm. So I would expect to see David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs utilized early, keeping the chains moving and really controlling the time of possession. But at the same time, you have such great weapons on offense outside for Jared Goff. I expect that when you look at the Chargers defense, it clearly struggles against the pass. So I expect Sam Laporta, I expect Amon-Ra St. Brown, really in your fantasy league, start them, no doubt. And also, I give credit, I think in the second half of the year, Josh Reynolds is going to continue to eat and feast. I think he's a player that is going to be definitely utilized quite a bit and really is a key third down target, moves the chains, can be a player that you can kind of extend the field with. So I think the offense has a lot of options at their disposal, but this offense is predicated on the run. I think they established that early, because when you establish the run, that's how Jared Goff starts to cook later in the game. And so I expect the Lions to really put up some offensive numbers out there on the road. Ideal conditions, I think the hunger that they have. And another player that I want to see eat this week, it's got to be Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden's got to cook. 4.5 sacks is not good enough. Very good pressure rate. I'm not saying that, he's been a disappointment, but the man's got to cook. The man's got to light up Justin Herbert and really allow the defense to get that football back. I want to see Aiden Hutchinson with 2 or 3 sacks this week. Put Justin Herbert on the ground. The Cali boy needs to kind of eat the turf this week.
And John, too, about the Aiden Hutchinson point you just made, and I agree with you, by the way. I think it's time for Aiden to get back into the sack column and start getting production, because we know he can do it. But the other part of that defensive line, John, is there anybody else? Because I think Julian Okwara is the interesting one, because he's played 40-something snaps and has 2 sacks or whatever it is. Who else on that defensive line? Of course, Aleem McNeil is having a pretty good year. But last week against the Raiders, it was more, before the bye week, was more by committee, getting after the quarterback. Who is it this week besides Aiden and Aleem that you expect to step up? Or will it be a get to the quarterback by committee once again?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of where this all begins, is that teams have figured out, okay, let's give attention extra to Aiden Hutchinson. And he is getting the bulk of attention from the offensive line, getting double teamed, getting held repeatedly, but he's got to fight through that. All the greats fight through the double teams and still earn their numbers. But with that said, there's opportunities for Josh Pascal, opportunities for John Kaminsky, who I think has an opportunity to get some love and attention this week. But a player that I asked about this week to the coaching staff has been Charles Harris. This is a veteran defensive captain, and he's a guy that obviously has kind of not been there in regards to the numbers when you look at pass rush win rates and things like that. So I asked the defensive line coach, John Scott Jr., hey, how did he handle getting benched? I mean, defensive captains typically don't get benched, but against the Ravens, I could see where you maybe not want to use Charles Harris. I think the second half of the year is going to be key for the veteran. I think he's a player that everybody respects, but he's got to do more. And in a game where it could have the potential to be close, any opportunity you can to pressure the quarterback. Because if you let Justin Herbert survey the landscape and handle business, that's another guy. That's a real interesting. I'm curious to see how he performs, because when he has opportunities, he can extend plays. He's savvy. And man, when you look at Justin Herbert, I do give him credit. He stands in there and takes a pounding. He's not afraid of staring pressure in the face. So I do believe I'm looking at Charles Harris and, like you said, Julian Okwara at the same time when he gets in those sub packages to get in and handle business too. He's been an interesting player in that he comes in spurts, but just hasn't been that consistent pass rusher. I'm not certain that that's the reason why they didn't go out and get another edge rusher for the Lions. I do think they like what they have. I just don't think they wanted to pay upwards of $90 million plus to another player when they have so many options much more affordably.
Good stuff, John. I appreciate you for joining the show. I know you got a lot of stuff to do. You got a lot of books behind you. You got to read. I mean, you got things you got to do. So, but good work, John. You can find John, by the way, for all the people listening. You guys know Thursdays with John McEnroe. But again, publisher of All Lions, host of the Detroit Sports Podcast, Detroit Sports Podcast on Twitter. Thanks for joining the show, John. We appreciate you every single week, more than you know.
Definitely. I'm certainly busy, but never too busy to check in on the number one show on this network. There's no way in hell any respectable list is put out and doesn't put you two guys on it, because, hey, you guys are here every morning. You guys know how tough it is to set the table in the morning. Neil and Lindsay and Darren, they're great, but they're never there. So when I tune in, there could be 2 new guys every single day. You guys are consistent. You handle business. And look, let's be honest, you guys hold it down and do a good job. You put me on the show, so that puts you number one in my mind forever and a day.
Yes, John! That's what I'm talking about. John, I'm telling you, John is a real one. We appreciate you, John. That is big time, by the way. We got the John McEnroe stamp right there.
It's a dog.
Yeah, he's a dog. That's a ball knower. We know what time it is. All right, appreciate you, John. Have a good one. We'll see you next Thursday, man. Enjoy your weekend. All right, guys. Thank you, man. John. Yeah. By the way, he didn't have to do that. All right.
No,
I didn't pay John to say that. I didn't give him any Condor Stallions, Venmo. That was all him. Damn. And Detroit Supremacy says the glazing is crazy. Well, no, John doesn't typically do that. So listen, John, real one, we appreciate you. Let's go to break. When we come back, we'll get into more about the Detroit Lions. If Kool-Aid's here, maybe we could get right into the Pistons discussion. We'll save the Lions for a little bit later. But again, before we do that, we got to...